This is a rare Ethiopian Orthodox Bible manuscript, handwritten in Ethiopia's sacred liturgical language, Ge'ez.
An Ethiopian monk's final statement about Jesus is raising biblical questions no Western pulpit has been willing to answer. For 60 years, he lived sealed inside a clifftop monastery in northern Ethiopia behind a single leather rope, guarding a manuscript older than almost every surviving copy of the New Testament. He never preached from it. He never quoted it. He never let it leave the room. Then, on the last night of his life, with the candle burning low, he finally said aloud 3 things about Christ that 30 generations of monks before him chose to carry to their graves rather than speak. The old man on the cliff. Let me set the room, because the room matters. This is Debridamo. Beside the young monk stands an older deacon, quieter, who will not look directly at the manuscript open on the goatskin coverlet. He cannot. The pages are vellum. The script is Ge'ez, Ethiopia's sacred liturgical language, the one the angels are said to speak. The old man's eyes are clouded with cataracts, thickening for a decade. His fingers are stained black from 60 years of dipping a reed pen into iron gall ink. He cannot read the page anymore. He does not need to. He has read this manuscript every day since he was 31. He knows it the way your heart knows its own beating. And the book on that coverlet is not a copy of anything you have ever held. It is older than nearly every surviving copy of the New Testament. It is one of perhaps 3 known volumes of its kind anywhere on earth. He spent 60 years sealed behind a single leather rope, guarding it. He never preached from it. He never quoted it. He never let it leave that room. So, sit with the question the young monk is sitting with. Why guard a book for 60 years, refuse to speak a single word of it? Then, on the last night of your life, decide, tonight is the night the silence ends. The thing your Bible never told you. The old man is thinking about the first time he opened it, at 31, and the floor falling out from under him because that is what happened. Here is what he learned. The thing most people raised in Western Christianity are never told. The Bible on your shelf is not the whole Bible. The Western canon was closed at 66 books. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church preserved 81. The Book of Enoch, woven all through Ethiopian scripture, names 200 watcher angels who descended to Mount Hermon, took human wives, and produced a hybrid line. The leaders of those watchers are named directly on the page. Rome removed the text. Ethiopia kept it. But Enoch is not why his hands are shaking tonight. Enoch is the small thing, the part he could have told anyone, any year, and never did, because it is nothing next to what he is about to do. He believes the manuscript in front of him is the reason most of what the modern world calls Christianity was built on a teaching window that was almost completely erased, and he is about to show his 2 disciples exactly where that window was torn out. The 40 days that were left blank. Think about what your Gospels hand you. The 40 days between the resurrection and the ascension, arguably the single most consequential teaching window in the entire faith. In Luke, it is resolved in a handful of verses. Jesus appears, he blesses the disciples, he ascends. 40 days, 1 paragraph. No content. The old man has spent 60 years with the text that fills that page. According to the vellum in front of him, the risen Christ did not come back to comfort anyone. He came back the way a commander pulls his officers into a room moments before the building collapses. He came back to warn them. The very first thing he said, the old man believes, should have been printed on the cover of every Bible ever made. Do not build temples of stone, for the stone will crumble. Build the temple of the heart, for it is eternal. Read that again. Not poetry, a precise warning aimed at the exact infrastructure that would later be built in his name. And the old man has not even reached the dangerous part. The young monk sees the next sentence forming on his lips and goes still, because he can see in the old man's face that what is coming is worse. The first warning. The old man's voice drops, and the deacon leans closer to catch it. According to the text, Christ went further. He described men in long robes who would invoke his name to accumulate gold. He warned of a future empire that would seize his cross and carry it as a weapon. Crusades, inquisitions, cathedrals funded on the backs of the poor. He told his disciples plainly that the true believer must remain a stranger to the systems of men. If the floor is shifting under you, that is exactly what the old man felt at 31. And he has carried that vertigo every day since. He tells his disciples the next teaching, the second of three, is the one the monks have always considered the most dangerous. The one that, had it ever been printed and carried across the Roman Empire, would have made every institutional church on earth structurally irrelevant overnight. Subscribe now, because the old man did not break 60 years of silence for these words to be scrolled past by the people who need them most. And what he whispers next is the reason the silence existed at all. 2 winds. He pauses. The candle flickers. And what he describes next sounds less like theology than like a man describing an illness he has watched move through people. Every human being, he says, has 2 winds moving through them at all times. The wind of life and the wind of error. The wind of error is not a vague notion of sin. In this text, it is a parasite, precise, methodical, with specific entry points. It enters through greed. It enters through the eyes when they rest on what they should not. It enters through the mouth when it speaks deception. And once it takes hold, it does not simply make a person worse. It calcifies the heart. It hardens the inner architecture of a human being until they become what the text calls, without softening a word, a walking tomb. A person who wakes, eats, performs, sleeps, rises again, and whose inner world has already gone cold. A walking tomb. That phrase has sat on this mountain for 2,000 years, and almost no one outside these walls knows it exists. The old man is not telling them this to frighten them. He is telling them because the text gives an antidote, and the antidote is the thing he has been protecting. It is not a sacrament, it is not a ritual, it is not membership in any institution. The text calls it knowledge. Direct, internal, personal knowledge that requires no priest, no bishop, no intermediary standing between a human being and the divine. And then comes the line the old man has waited his whole life to say to someone who would carry it. The kingdom of heaven is inside the human being, hidden in the silence between thoughts. Hold the weight of that one sentence, because the old man is about to tell you exactly what it would have done to an empire, and why someone made sure you would never read it, why this had to disappear. The old man's eyes are closed. He is not reciting. He is remembering the night this became unbearable. If the average person in the Roman Empire had truly believed the kingdom was inside them, he says, they would have stopped paying temple taxes. They would have stopped fearing excommunication. They would have stopped needing the machinery of religion to manage their relationship with the divine. They would have become, in the language of every empire that has ever existed, completely uncontrollable. This, the monks believe, is why the book had to vanish from the world the West inherited. And it is what the old man has spent 60 years making certain survived. But he stops there, deliberately, because the most dangerous teaching of the 3 is still locked behind his teeth. And the young monk realizes, with a cold drop in his stomach, that the old man is pacing himself because he is not sure he has the breath left to reach it. The warning they buried. The young monk asks if he wants water. He shakes his head. His breath is shorter now, the candle burning faster than it should. He tells them what comes next is the line the monks have always protected most carefully. The line he waited until his last night to say, because saying it earlier felt like handing someone a blade. In the text, the risen Christ looks at the disciples who have just watched him die and return, and he says something that is not comfort and is not gentle prophecy. The darkness will come, and it will wear my face. Not a monster in the night, not an obvious villain, a deception so precise, so architecturally sophisticated, that it would look exactly like him. It would speak his name. It would carry his cross. It would build cathedrals in his honor. It would write his words on the inside covers of the very texts it would use to control people. It would become the exact instrument of spiritual destruction that everything he taught was built to prevent. The Antichrist in this text is not a tyrant on a future throne. It is a system, an institution wearing the costume of the man it betrayed. And the monks of Debre Damo have believed for 2,000 years that this passage was never describing something coming. It was describing something already arrived. The old man has read those words 10,000 times. He tells his disciples that tonight, finally, he believes the world has reached the exact moment they were written for. And then he says, there is one outsider, one Westerner, who came close enough to feel it, and you need to hear what it did to the man's hands. The Westerner who came close. The old man never met him, but has thought about him for years. His name is Jacques Mercier, a French ethnologist affiliated for decades with the National Center for Scientific Research in Paris. In the late 1990s, he was the man Ethiopian authorities trusted to authenticate the Garima Gospels, illustrated Christian manuscripts whose radiocarbon dating would later place them between roughly 330 and 650 AD. Some of the oldest illustrated Christian manuscripts ever found anywhere on Earth. While Europe moved through its darkest centuries, the monasteries here were sealed inside cliff fortresses, holding an early architecture of the faith almost untouched, unedited, unapproved by Rome. Mercier put his hands on the Garima Gospels, and he has spoken openly about that moment. The silence in the room, the unsteadiness in his own fingers, the realization that the manuscripts predated almost everything he had been taught was authoritative. The text on the goatskin coverlet has only ever been read in fragments by a handful of Western scholars. Several have privately described the same physical reaction Mercier did, a kind of vertigo, the sensation that the floor of everything they knew was sliding out from under them. The old man knows that sensation intimately, because he has lived inside it every day since 1965, and then he tells his disciples something that makes the deacon look up sharply. What he is about to reveal in the next 40 minutes is not even the most dangerous thing in the room. The most dangerous thing in the room is in the ground beneath their feet, the ark beneath the stone. The old man has never seen it. No one alive outside one chosen man has, but he has spent 60 years knowing it is there. Ethiopia has insisted, without wavering, for 3,000 years, that the Ark of the Covenant is here, kept inside the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in the ancient city of Axum. Not as legend, not as metaphor. Under guard right now, as the old man lies dying. The story is recorded in the Kebra Nagast, Ethiopia's royal chronicle. The Queen of Sheba travels to Jerusalem. She meets Solomon. She returns carrying his son, Menelik I. When a grown Menelik returns to visit his father, Solomon offers him the throne of Israel. Menelik refuses, but he does not leave empty-handed. He and his companions are said to replace the Ark in the Holy of Holies with a replica and carry the original back into Africa. Now, think about what the biblical accounts describe that object doing. It consumed armies. It struck people dead on contact when they touched it without authorization. It released fire with no natural explanation. Read those accounts not as mythology, but as technical description, and the symptom profile sounds uncomfortably close to something emitting sustained radiation. Here is the part the old man cannot stop turning over in his mind. There is only ever one guardian at a time. He is chosen. He enters the chapel. He never leaves again for the rest of his life. And visitors who have watched the line of guardians across generations report the same pattern every time. Deteriorating eyesight, cataracts arriving too early, skin that pales over the years, death that comes well before it should. The old man's eyes are clouded with cataracts. His skin is pale as the vellum. He is dying well before a man on a quiet mountain should. He never touched the Ark, but he spent 60 years pressed against a manuscript out of the same world. And he is wondering, the way you are wondering, what exactly he has been breathing in all this time. The Knights Templar came into Ethiopia in the 12th century to hunt for that object. They carved their symbols into the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela. They went home without it. Ethiopia alone among every African nation was never colonized. When Italy arrived in 1896 with modern weapons and the full backing of a European empire, it was broken at the Battle of Adwa, and it is Lalibela, of all his memories, that the old man returns to most, because he saw it once and never could explain what he saw. The churches that should not exist. He was 29 the one time he stood in front of them, and he has gone back to that day more times than he has read his own manuscript. You need to understand why. King Lalibela did not build 11 churches. He carved them downward into solid volcanic rock. Whole cathedrals. Windows, doors, columns, interior chambers, drainage systems. All cut from single continuous pieces of stone. Not assembled, not stacked. Excavated from the inside of a mountain. And this is not a technique that forgives a single mistake. You cannot patch a cracked column in solid rock. Every dimension, every load-bearing decision, every chamber had to exist perfectly inside one man's mind before a chisel ever touched the surface. Now, the arithmetic, which the old man has sat with for 50 years, carving all 11 with 12th century tools, would have demanded something on the order of tens of thousands of skilled workers, laboring without pause for well over a century. The work is traditionally credited to a window of about 24 years. The numbers do not meet. They are not even close. And then there is the part that made the old man stop sleeping for a week after he saw it. The rock that was removed, millions of tons of volcanic material, is not there. No debris field, no quarry dump, no clear evidence of where it went. The stone was there. The churches are there. The stone is gone. Where does a mountain go? The monks all give the same answer, unchanged for centuries. Human workers carved during the day. At night, the texts say, angels descended and continued the work, using what is described with strange, specific precision as tools of light that pass through solid rock without friction. The old man does not hear a fairy tale. He hears a description of directed energy, recorded by people who had no other words for what they watched happen. The most famous of the 11 is the Church of St. George, a perfect cross carved straight down into the earth until its roof sits flush with the ground. Beneath the whole complex runs a network of pitch-black tunnels, where candidates for the priesthood are sent in alone, in total darkness, to find their way by touch and sound while chanting. The old man walked one at 29 and understood it instantly. You must pass through the darkness before you are given the light. Recent three-dimensional laser scans found hollow chambers beneath those floors, sealed for 8 centuries. The priests call them the treasury of the saints. Gold manuscripts, possibly the very tools used in the original work. No one has been given permission to open them. The old man believes he knows what is inside, and that it connects to a bloodline the West deleted on purpose. The bloodline they deleted. The old man's lips are moving in Ge'ez. He is not praying. He is working through the same thing he has worked through 10,000 nights. In Western Christianity, Jesus has no descendants. The story ends at the cross and resumes in heaven. His family line, if it existed at all, is treated as irrelevant or theologically impossible. To the old man, raised inside this church, that silence is not just strange, it is incomprehensible. Because Ethiopia's Solomonic dynasty ruled for nearly 3,000 years, from roughly 900 BC until 1974, one unbroken royal lineage. The last emperor, Haile Selassie, was counted as the 225th ruler in that chain. His official title was the Conquering Lion of the Tribe of Judah. Not a flourish, a legal claim, a genealogical claim, a direct biological line traced back to King David himself. Here's the thing the old man cannot let go of. If Mary, the mother of Jesus, belonged to the house of David, and Ethiopia's royal dynasty traced that same bloodline for 3 millennia, then the relationship between Ethiopia and Christ was never only theological. It was familial, traceable, family. Then modern genetics walked in and did not soften it. DNA studies of Ethiopian populations have identified ancient genetic markers from the Levant, from the region of modern Israel and Syria, dating back roughly 3,000 years. Not mythological migration, biological migration, real people who left the Near East and settled here. The oral traditions, it turns out, were written into the genome itself. It is also why this church looks nothing like its Western counterpart. The Saturday Sabbath is kept. Circumcision on the 8th day is kept. The dietary laws of Leviticus are kept. This church did not borrow Jewish practice. It never abandoned it. And that brings the old man to the idea he believes is the most dangerous of everything he has carried. More dangerous than Enoch. More dangerous than the Ark. If Jesus survived the crucifixion, as certain ancient texts have been read to suggest, quietly, without fanfare, and he needed to vanish into a place that would guard him with their lives and ask no question Rome could overhear, where would he go? The old man's breath catches on the answer, and so should yours. The righteous teacher. Where better, the old man whispers, than a kingdom ruled by his own bloodline? In the remote Ethiopian highlands, oral traditions speak of a teacher who arrived from the north, a healer, a man whose manner of speaking was unlike anything the people had encountered. They do not call him Jesus, they call him the righteous teacher. And no outside scholar has ever been able to explain who the righteous teacher was. His eyes are closed, his lips still moving, and there is a saying passed down through this church for centuries that carries the weight of people who know something the rest of the world has been told to forget. The West has the water. We have the well. The old man has held that sentence his whole life. And now, the young monk asks the question he has been afraid to ask all night, the one you are asking too. Why now? Why break 60 years of silence on this exact evening, in this exact room, with the candle almost gone? Why now? The old man opens his eyes. The answer, he says, is in the text itself. The manuscript describes the conditions of the end times using a phrase in Ge'ez that translates as closely as the language allows to webs of illusion, a world that is hyper-connected but fundamentally false, where people communicate without physical voices, where they see without physical eyes, where information travels faster than truth, and the manufactured image replaces lived reality. Read that slowly. It maps onto the internet, social media, and the early architecture of artificial intelligence with a precision that should not be possible inside a text 2,000 years old. The old man tells them the theory the monks have held all along. They were never simply preserving scripture. They were maintaining a timed release, an emergency document deliberately designed to be opened at a specific threshold moment in human history, when the conditions described inside it were unmistakably active in the world. The trigger was never a date. The trigger was a description. And by this monastery's own reading, we are standing inside that description right now. Trust in governments collapsed. Trust in media collapsed. Trust in organized religion declining at the fastest rate in modern recorded history. People starving for something they cannot name. Something direct, unmediated, with no institution standing between them and the truth. That hunger you cannot name is the alarm clock the monks set 2,000 years ago. It is going off now. The old man goes further. The Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, he says, did not simply organize Christianity. By the internal logic of these texts, it performed a targeted disarmament. The books removed were not cut because they were unreliable. They were cut because they described human beings as spiritually autonomous, with direct access to the divine that needed no priestly intermediary. Remove those books, and you remove the reader's armor. Ethiopia never accepted that removal. In some passages, the old man says, do not even read like theology. They read like physics. Researchers have identified language describing what modern acoustics would classify as resonant frequency manipulation. Precisely directed sound used to alter physical matter. Replace the word angels at Lalibela with advanced acoustic technology, and suddenly nothing about those 11 churches is impossible. This was never a religious awakening. It was the return of a science buried on purpose by people who understood exactly what they were burying and why. And the man who guarded the last copy is, right now, on this cliff, running out of breath to finish. The last breath. The candle is almost gone. The young monk can hear it now, the rattle in the old man's chest. The deacon has tears in his eyes, and he is the kind of man who does not cry. The old man's hand rests on the open page. The ink-stained fingers do not move. He gathers what is left of his breath and tells them the 3 teachings are not theological curiosities. They are a survival kit, built for exactly this moment. For people living inside manufactured realities and starving for something real. He says them one last time, in order, like a man pressing keys into someone's palm. The first, do not build temples of stone, for the stone will crumble. Build the temple of the heart, for it is eternal. The institution cannot save you. Go inward, or do not go at all. The second, the kingdom of heaven is inside the human being, hidden in the silence between thoughts. The thing you have been searching for is not gate-kept by a bishop or a denomination or a subscription to the correct belief. It is inside you, in the place where thought stops and something else begins. The third, the one he says last and quietly, as if the walls themselves have ears. The darkness will come and it will wear my face. This, he tells them, is the teaching he spent 60 years protecting. Not because it is the most mystical, because it is the most immediately useful. The deception that would speak his name and carry his cross was never coming. It had already arrived, and the only protection against it was the first 2 teachings. Go inward, find the silence, and do not, under any circumstance, mistake the costume for the man. His breath catches. The young monk reaches for his hand. The deacon lowers his head and begins to chant in Ge'ez, the language the angels are said to speak. The candle gutters, hisses, and goes out. The old man dies on his manuscript at 20 minutes to 4 in the morning, in a room lit only by the cold blue of the moon through the slit window of the cliff cell. His 2 disciples have carried those words ever since. The West has the water. We have the well. After 2,000 years of silence, the well is finally open. If those 3 teachings landed somewhere inside you, tell me which one in the comments. Was it the temple of the heart, the silence between thoughts, or the warning about the darkness wearing his face? Subscribe now, because the old man did not break 60 years of silence, so the people who needed him most would scroll past him in the dark. What he protected goes far deeper than what we have covered tonight, and the next chapter is one most people will never be ready to hear.